Most fun tanks now and beyond in 10.2. Which tank can you actually enjoy your time for the next month or so? And is it good to go into 10.2 with the recent tier set changes and continuously adaptation? So let's see exactly where everything is, of course, from a biased perspective as a tank aficionado. Listen, we're gonna start with Blood Decay, and I have a bone to pick with Blood Decay because it's still doing poop single target damage. Now, granted, that's not the point. The point is to have fun, but losing aggro to your party is not fun. It doesn't happen that much though. And in single target, you're never gonna lose aggro because you're just gonna taunt, and that's fine. And in AoE, seemingly it still does good, and you might actually do quite a bit of damage in AoE with the current tier set. Not to mention that I don't see in 10.17 how you'd ever need a healer as a Blood Decay if you know what you're doing. Now we're of course talking about what it's going to be in 10.2, and the tier set that Blood Decay essentially received, you know, that was announced about 2 weeks ago, was poop, but then it was repaired, and now with the 2 set actually works off of your runic bar consumption, meaning that the overall playstyle and the effect that you're going to be getting and playing with in 10.2 is going to be manageable, good, and actually probably provide a lot of good stuff for you. Now, granted, in the scope of fun, and if you haven't seen our video with the DK rework, you should, Blood Decay still has some issues that kind of prevent it to be kind of raised up at the level of other tanks as well. It's fun. Listen, not having to rely on a healer, it is very fun, but the playstyle is very stagnant, consistent across the board. There's no like new mechanics, right? We have all these new talents, but you're pretty much doing the same thing as you're always doing: hard striking and death striking, and occasionally marrow rending, which some of the things for Blood Decay have been fixed and made to feel better when you're pressing them, like the generation of bone shields, the dancing room weapon, juggling, and you're doing some cool absorb stuff with the current tier set, which is arguably a little bit more fun as a tank than the next tier set, but we haven't played with the next tier set just yet. So with that out of the way, I would put Blood Decay in B tier. And this pains my little nerd heart because Blood Decay is always a fan favorite of mine, possibly the second or third most fun tank that I always have fun with, because they haven't changed it since. Speaking of change, Brewmaster is also getting very little of it. Brewmaster is getting another Fire Breath themed tier set. Well, it's not really Fire Breath now, but Fire Breath is still going to be your playstyle, meaning that similar to Blood Decay, you're likely going to still be playing the same talents unless we see some like weird buffs and nerfs in the next coming of weeks. Now, thankfully, Brewmaster is still doing a gazillion damage, which is always really fun to do as a Brewmaster and become like second in terms of overall damage in your group, which is fun for you, not for your DPS as much, but who cares about those, man? They already have an easy job. You're here to tank. In terms of actual tankiness, the tier set so far, from what we've been able to test, it's looking like it's semi-decent tanky. You do get a lot of absorb through Celestial Brew, which is also kind of working as Purifying Brew because it kind of negates some of the stagger that you have, which is always good, but similar also to Blood Decay, you kind of still play the same thing. And not only that, the rotation is very cumbersome with a lot of button bloat that still doesn't seem to be anywhere near fixing. Monk needs a rework, because, you know, we've touched about that in a video. You can find anything like that on our channel. But Brewmaster, once again, you're still kind of doing the exact same thing. Listen, if you're having fun with Brewmaster now, you're likely going to be having maybe slightly more fun next year, but I don't know exactly where the tankiness will end up being at. So I will still put this around B tier. It's good, it's fun. Listen, the rotation is fun, but it definitely feels like a DPS. So I don't know if you're here because you like tanking or because you like DPSing, or you want a DPS but you want to be tanky, then that class, the Brewmaster that is the class for you. Bear. Now, Bear in 10.17 is very fun, and not that the rotation is extremely fun and engaging gameplay. It's okay. It's, let's say, the entry-level tank that you should get into with one other on this list. But you are very tanky, and not only are you very tanky, you also do a lot of damage, which, funny enough, it's what makes tanks interesting. Being able to actually push content and take your party to the next level if you're doing Mythic Plus, or even if you're doing Raid, although in Raid, tankiness is like a non-issue right now. If you're about 430, 440 eye level, pretty much nothing can kill you in the game as a bear, and you can probably push I mean, you know, people push 32s, 33s with Bear right now, and it's really, really fun. Now, going into 10.2, my friend, you are in for a treat, and that treat is Swedish licorice, because that treat is disgusting, and Bear is horrible in 10.2 currently. I do have to say that currently, and that is because Bear, fundamentally, outside of the tier set, it is a very weak and bland tank. They haven't actually changed any of its core mechanics. They have slightly buffed it, but the current tier set in 10.1 is so strong that they couldn't really touch Bear, you know, behind the hood, or under the hood rather. And now Bear has been nerfed, and the next tier set is also way worse for Bear, giving you a lot less tankiness, a lot less damage, less HP. So you're going to feel it. You're going to feel why Bear wasn't really that good before the 10.1 tier set. Bear needs definitely some change. With that out of the way, it's still a pretty fun tank. You are essentially a druid. If you're a really experienced Bear, you can do some shifting around to kind of, you know, cheese a couple of things, and that's always really fun, especially in raids when you can, you know, swap to cats if the cat weaving ever becomes a thing again, and you can do damage that way. Now, you still bring a lot of utility as a Bear, and over the years, Bears have become a lot better at providing said utility, so you don't have to feel like you have to shift from Bear, but there are still a couple of things that need to be added there. Because how fun Bear is right now, and because it is a druid, and it will change next set, I will put it into A tier with the hopes, by the way, with the hopes that the new tier set will be tuned in such a way where maybe it won't be God comp next year, but at least feel good, because if the numbers for the new tier set end up getting tuned, it's interesting to have an absorb and reflect damage back as your kind of damage profile. Prot Paladin right now is an okay tank. It's tier set right now, it's kind of and doesn't really provide any interesting type of gameplay. However, as opposed to Bear, Prot Paladin without the tier set has a really cool utility kit and a really cool tanky kit in terms of what cooldowns you have available and how you approach a pack, how much damage you do. Remember that before the Bear became crazy, Prot Paladin was the king of tank DPS, and that is pretty much with outside too much tier set influence, although that definitely helps as well. So likely going into the next tier set, or 10.2 rather, Prot Paladin is still going to retain that plus whatever it's going to be getting with the new tier set. Now, also similar to the Bear, the tier set is poop. I think Dorky tested the numbers out, and it ended up that the consecration was just ugh in terms of overall damage. Not to mention that having to rely on consecration now, whether it is with the next tier set or currently with how consecration functions for Prot Paladin as a defensive mechanic, because it gives you more damage reduction, it forces you to be in the actual consecration, which now is fine. It's an old mechanic, it probably could go and we would still be happier still, but in the next patch you cannot go out of the consecration, because once the consecration expires or you move out of it, you lose a lot of the benefits from the consecration with the current version of the tier set. Hopefully this will change. It did change for Blood Decay, it did change for Bear to be better. Hopefully we see that for Prot Paladin. However, I do think Prot Paladin is slightly more fun than Bear, so we'll put it in front of Bear. It's not as tanky and it doesn't do as much damage now, but we will see how the numbers are tuned for 10.2. Prot Warrior is the other entry-level tank that I wanted to mention, because Prot Warrior has changed over the years. And right now in 10.1.7, it is a blast to play. It is so fun. It is so simple, because Prot Warrior essentially offered people a very high barrier of entry when it comes to actually performing with its kit, where it kind of created this mentality that Prot Warrior is weak and squishy, and it's not really. It's obviously not God comp material, but it definitely has a lot of tankiness and a lot of damage as well, similar to Prot Paladin. Remember, Prot Warrior is also king at AoE DPS, not as much as single target, but that can change in 10.2 with the tier set, which grantedly has been nerfed, because if you have seen any of our raid testing in previous videos, we had a Prot Warrior that was doing second most damage in our group. That is not okay for a tank to do, but that's not going to happen in 10.2. However, the playstyle is fun in using Shield Slam to actually blast bleeds on your target and also provide you with damage reduction. Now, I don't know if it's as fun as the current tier set, because the current tier set is really cool to rotate last stand around, that gives you a damage boost, and of course overall provides you with tankiness across the board, and Prot Warrior still retains its fun. Now, kind of similar to the other tanks, the rotation and the playstyle probably won't change very much. Its talents doesn't leave a lot of variety in terms of like what you do with your buttons and how you approach packs and some of the capstones for Pro Warrior are so strong that you're probably never not going to have them unless some like major serious tuning is gonna happen to its kit. But I do think that out of all of these tanks, it is one of the most, if not the funnest tank to play. It blasts all around. It's a good choice to pick in 10.1.7. Vengeance Demon Hunter is very hard to rank because currently, right now in 10.1.7, it's okay, it's fun. It's the Vengeance Demon Hunter. You're hopping around, doing a lot of fire damage, spreading Fiery Brand out, which is, funny enough, the only really way that you can actually survive, because prior to this, Vengeance was pretty weak, from my knowledge. I might be wrong, but it is fun. It's still the Vengeance kit. It's not its fun it's been the last couple of years, but we are slated for a rework in 10.2, which currently, as at the recording of this video, we don't know anything about, although by the time it comes out, we might already have the Vengeance rework to talk about, and we're gonna have a video on that as well. Until then, we can only speculate what it could be in 10.2. Havoc, at the very least, is getting some really interesting changes in its talents and its playstyles, and it's definitely looking like it's more fun in 10.2. So hopefully Vengeance is as well. I am going to be severely surprised if Vengeance is less fun in 10.2 than it is now, because now it's just fine. It's not the best, and obviously this is my personal experience. You still feel like you're kind of like the Brewmaster, but with a little bit as in a DPS that is tanky, but you have less damage and less tankiness, kind of, outside of meta. I still don't feel like I should be a tank if I'm only really tanky in Metamorphosis. That doesn't really feel right, so I will put Vengeance into C tier, unfortunately, but with the caveat that if the rework actually hits home, I will be the first one to try Vengeance. I'm not gonna be the first one, but I will try Vengeance, because like I said, at least Havoc is getting a decent, sweet rework with a lot of quality of life changes for the momentum build players, and you can check the video that we already made on the Havoc to kind of give you an idea of what you could expect from Vengeance as well, although we will have a dedicated Vengeance as well. But until then, if you like or you don't like momentum, you should watch the Havoc Demon Hunter rework to completely blast your world apart.